Ambassador Steve Witkoff told CNN yesterday that Putin agreed in Alaska to security guarantees for Ukraine and legislation barring Russia from taking any more land in Ukraine or Europe if a peace deal can be reached.
We were able to win the following concession, that the United States could offer Article 5-like protection, which is one of the real reasons why Ukraine wants to be in NATO. We sort of were able to bypass that and get an agreement that the United States could offer Article 5 protection, which was the first time we had ever heard the Russians agree to that.
Witkoff said this was a game changer, and it is. But the security guarantees language is making everyone, myself and Steve Bannon included, very nervous. Today, Europe's illicit leaders will back up Ukraine's Zelensky in a meeting at the White House. They will argue for U.S.-led security arrangements and other means to keep the war going. I'm Barbara Boyd, and I've followed the British imperial attack on Russia and the United States since the 2014 coup in Ukraine. Today, I'll tell you more about what really happened in Alaska. Then I'm going to show you what you might not appreciate about Trump saying Ukraine is Biden's war. Finally, I'm going to talk about developments in Trump's battle to take out our deep state, which involves the very same people who started the war in Ukraine. Now, Ambassador Witkoff's statement about Ukrainian security guarantees, like Article 5 of NATO, raises a big question for me. Are we obligating ourselves to a new war if these two nations, which hate each other, manage to break the peace? Then I thought about it. What is Putin getting in return if he's willing to make that concession? Why would he make that concession when he is winning the war? Well, there's all sorts of speculation about land swaps, that Trump will push Ukraine to give up the Donbass, the area of eastern Ukraine, which has already voted to join Russia and has been in a civil war with the Ukrainian regime since 2014. In addition, all the territory Russia has gained will remain with Russia. But I think there's much, much more involved here. Putin keeps saying the root causes of the war have to be addressed to make peace. He's talking about the modern British Empire's plan to overthrow the Russian government and break up Russia. That plan has been in effect since the Berlin Wall fell in 1989. For Putin to agree to Ukrainian security guarantees, Russia's security also had to be guaranteed. I think Trump gave him assurances about that in Alaska. Massive economic deals between the U.S. and Russia will kick in if a peace deal is reached. These deals have been discussed ever since Trump's election and involve making Russia an ally again rather than an enemy. Now, Trump keeps stressing that this is Biden's war. If you understand this, you'll see what Trump and Putin are up to and what the real stakes are. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, our foreign policy blog began a campaign to decapitate the Russian state and break up Russia. Our homegrown British agents, Zbigniew Brzezinski and Madeleine Albright under Clinton, Condi Rice and Dick Cheney under Bush, and Joe Biden and Victoria Nuland under Obama, they all ran this. You see, before Trump, presidents were not that important. They really performed publicly, but they never really were running things. That is the British and European way of doing things. Starting in 1999, NATO was expanded to include all of the former Warsaw Pact states. Two former Soviet states, Estonia and Latvia, with Finland, now represent NATO on Russia's border. Staged wars and color revolutions broke out all along Russia's southern flank in the Balkans, in Chechnya, in Georgia, in the Caucasus. Color revolutions in Ukraine and Georgia were meant to take NATO right up against a huge stretch of Russia's border with offensive weapons aimed at Russia to match. This all happened despite a promise we made to Russia in 1990, which was ironclad, that NATO would never expand beyond East Germany. And it was against warnings from every Russian expert in our intelligence community, from George Kennan to Biden CIA head Bill Burns, that NATO expansion, particularly expansion to Ukraine, was a Russian red line and would result in a war. That was a certainty. It's the equivalent of the Soviet Union placing offensive nuclear weapons in Cuba, like during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The 2014 coup in Ukraine started the present war. The Russian-speaking population of eastern Ukraine refused to go along with the coup, and so did Crimea. Crimea voted to join Russia. The eastern Donbass region sought independence from the government Obama installed in Kiev, which included outright Nazis. Ukraine's new government then went to war with their own citizens in the Donbass and Crimea. Joe Biden, who became Ukraine's viceroy after the coup, made millions from this corrupt deal. In Alaska, Putin said he tried to reason with President Biden to stop the slaughter in the Donbass and to stop the militarization of Ukraine aimed at Russia. Biden simply refused to talk about it. Instead, Zelensky threatened to obtain nuclear weapons if Ukraine could not join NATO and mass troops in preparation for a full-scale invasion of the Donbass. Biden, or whoever was running things at that point, sent the idiot Vice President Kamala Harris to Munich a couple days before the war started. She endorsed the idea of Ukraine joining NATO loudly and explicitly. If you want a blow-by-blow account of this, you can read it in Scott Horton's excellent book. It's called Appropriately Provoked and goes through all the ways the Ukrainian war against Russia was provoked. All the media propaganda and censorship techniques which were used against Trump in Russiagate were first tried and perfected in that Ukrainian coup, and then exported here. Cyber war hacking, staged terrorist attacks and riots were all practiced and perfected. All the people who played key roles in Russiagate also played key roles in the Ukrainian coup, from Christopher Steele to John Brennan to Gina Haspel to Victoria Nuland and all the Clinton and Biden foreign policy hacks to CrowdStrike and the Atlantic Council to George Soros' Open Society Foundation and its Eurasia desk to the Justice Department's National Security and International desk to the State Department and USAID. Russiagate was launched to prevent Trump from making peace with Russia and to continue the British offensive against Russia from Ukraine. The intention was to destroy the independence of both countries. Trump and Putin went through Russiagate together. They formed a bond. They understand what the British goal was. That's why Putin trusts Trump sufficiently to believe his guarantees of Russia's security. It's clear that Tulsi Gabbard and others are on the traitor hunt now in the right field for hunting traitors. They're targeting those parts of our security state which have functioned under British influence for decades. In addition to outright prosecution, key regime change nests within the government have been dismantled or repurposed, including the U.S. Institute for Peace and USAID. The Trump administration tried to cut all funding for the National Endowment for Democracy, which is the CIA's premier regime change agency. A court injunction stopped that, but the fight is on to defund it next year. But the deep state is still fighting the president from both the intelligence community and from our rotten Congress, particularly the Senate. Lindsey Graham has 80 co-sponsors for Senate Bill 1241, his wacko Russian sanctions bill. They include most Republicans in the Senate. The same bill in the House is called House Bill 2548. It has 44 Republican co-sponsors. You can look up whether your senator or congressman is on this useful idiots list by going to the links I just provided. Promethean PAC will be making this a major issue in the midterms. So there you have it. Today's White House meeting isn't diplomacy, it's a potential funeral. Europe's vassals are coming to bury a war they can no longer afford to fight and never had the strength to win. They're hated by their populations. They're only in office because their elections are rigged like ours was in 2020. Zelensky wearing a drab new suit and elevated shoes for this meeting tells you just about everything. Trump holds all the cards. Putin has his security guarantees, and Europe gets to learn what it feels like when the adults are back in charge. The deep state operatives who engineered this disaster from the 2014 coup onward are being systematically targeted. The same people who gave us Russiagate, who turned Ukraine into a killing field, who tried to destroy both America and Russian sovereignty, their time is up. The real America is back, and we're fighting for exactly that result.